Hey guys, I'm Dov, and today I'm back with more Total War Warhammer 2 Early Access action. Yes, indeed, we are back with the Vampire Coast, and this time we're going to be taking a look at a battle with Arnessa Saltspite. Yes, indeed, the human, I guess mutant, of the Vampire Coast. She is, in fact, not undead. If we have a look at the tooltip here, let's just quickly compare this Vampire Fleet Captain. Look, undead. Arnessa doesn't have that trait. Therefore, Arnessa is not undead, and like Invocation of the Heck, for example, won't heal her. It is an odd thing to note about her, but we're taking on the Vampire Count, led by Lore Master of Sotek. I definitely, right off the bat, would say that this build is not optimal or ideal for this particular matchup. I'll give you guys that at a later date, but I think you can guess which Legendary Lord would probably be best in this matchup, but I decided let's have some fun here. Let's see if we can make this Crab Death Star idea work. The main point about Arnessa, if we quickly go through her abilities, her item is the main reason I brought her here. This Kraken's Blade gives a area of effect, +5 melee attack, and +8 bonus versus large, meaning all of these crabs are now anti-large. She's also got Bonanza Luck to make herself a bit tankier, since she can't be healed. She has Hornswaggle, of course, as many Vampire Coast Lords do, that beautiful single target debuff, all hands way, and she also got a net, Spearfisher's Net. It'll only last 18 seconds, but also gives 27 melee defense in addition to immobilizing your opponent. So useful not only for shooting, but also for melee engagements as well. We've got a unit of Rotting Prometheans. These are the Regiment of Renown Rotting Prometheans with gunnery mobs on the back. Yeah, these guys have regeneration and expert charge defense. That's their Regiment of Renown traits. In general, the Rotting Prometheans are going to have charge defense against large. We've got some regular ones over here. Decent combat stats with heavy armor piercing damage and heavy armor as well. Yeah. So they're going to be anchoring this particular build. We've also got a whole line of zombies with polearms, of course, a single mortar, and a unit of depth guard with halberds. This is kind of the quote-unquote elite infantry, although they are very few in number. Kind of think of them like dismounted blood knights. They come in two varieties, one with halberd and one with dual axes, and they are going to be very, very powerful, but vulnerable to getting surrounded and outnumbered. For Lore Master of Sotek's Vampire Counts, he's got Fellbats, the new and improved Varguys. I have heard these guys have got some buffs. Haven't been able to look at them myself, but we'll have to have a look later. Red Duke and a Terrorgeist, as well as some Skeleton Warriors, plenty of Crypt Ghouls, a couple of Black Knights. He's also got some Graveguard, the Stearnsmen in fact, and yeah, that's pretty much it. Bats in the back. And you can see already zombies have been summoned up on, skeletons in fact have been summoned up on top of my mortar crew. I'm going to try and just extract them from this situation. You can see the zombies just shambling desperately away as they try and disengage here, and I try and save the crew, but their leadership's not doing great. They're getting close to crumbling. Looks like we're going to have some Terrorgeist breaths and some Dragon breaths coming down. It doesn't actually do a whole lot to Arnessa at the end of the day, so I'm pretty happy about that. Granted, any damage that she takes, again, she can't heal, so it's going to potentially be dangerous, but since the frontline engagement's underway, I'm like, okay, Lore Master Sotek's probably not going to charge down anytime soon. Let's get this crab train rolling here. So I know this is what you guys wanted to see, is crabs just tearing apart Crypt Ghouls, right? This massive Death Star of crabs, including the Leviathan with its massive ship shell, which is extremely loud, and we're going to zoom out because it is extremely loud. Red Duke goes ahead and dives in here. He's used LC, I believe, on the Fleet Captain. So this is a very smart move, going after the healer first, because the Fleet Captain, although she can't heal Arnessa, she can heal the rest of the Prometheans and the Leviathan. So yeah. Terrorgeist Breath actually looks like it hit the Red Duke more than anyone else, which is a bit unfortunate there. But this pocket definitely going in favor of the coast. You can see the Red Duke's been netted here, lowering his melee defense. We've also got the Hornswaggle, so in total he was down to 0 melee defense there, and he's taking a ton of damage from the crabs. Just a very, very unfortunate situation. Oh man, and the crabs are loud. They are angry, and their shells, you know, crackle and clank, and they just tear things to shreds. You can see the The mortar long ago was abandoned, and all the pieces are blown up at this point anyway, so it doesn't matter. The rotting Prometheans over on this side, not doing too hot. This pocket's going great for us. The rest of the battlefield, not so much. You can see the zombie polearms just getting outclassed by the Vampire Count's infantry here. The Vampire Count's infantry, of course, more of a, I guess you would call them a traditional army, just with no skirmishing. But I mean, they have, you know, your standard like heavy cavalry, your fast attack units, your variety of infantry. They're more of a sort of standard-ish type army, although they have no ranged units at all, whereas the Vampire Coast are very much not that. You know, they are very much, you know, no cav, very limited mobile options, but insanely powerful shooting units. I didn't bring that many in this particular battle, but they also have the crabs, of course. Very, very powerful monsters. You can see this crab Death Star just rolling around, basically just mowing down anything in its path. And the units here have taken relatively little damage. Only this one unit of Prometheans, which we've kind of formed up into the Death Star, has taken that extreme damage. And we've managed to work through a lot of the Vampire Count's units. At this point, things are looking pretty good on the balance of power. And you can see that the Red Duke and the Terrorgeist are just not real happy about the prospect of coming down in the middle of all of these anti-large armor-piercing crabs, because of course normally they're not anti-large, but Arnessa giving them that ability with her item there, particularly powerful. This unit of zombies unfortunately about to crumble away here and free up this flank, so we may be looking at a full surround here, which is not going to be great. I was trying to finish off some of these units in this center pocket before we get a full surround there. Looks like some Crypt Ghouls popping off there, but the Stern's been anchoring things very well here in the center. Of course, they're an incredibly tanky unit, very good melee defense and regeneration. Regenerating units against the Vampire Coast I think are going to be pretty decent because they lack access to fire damage almost entirely. I think they maybe have 1 or 2 units on the roster that have fire damage. On the whole, they just don't have much access to fire damage, so units which normally would be weak to fire, like regenerating type units, would probably be pretty decent in this matchup. Of course, the Vampire Coast has a few units that are weak to fire of its own, but you can see the Terrorgeist charges down here, again, going after the healer, which is very, very smart. You can see she's just about at her healing cap. Because of the hunger and because of, you know, the invocation of the heck and everything else, she's been able to keep herself topped off, but at this point, once she gets to her healing cap, you know, all that damage is true damage. Speaking of healing cap, the Red Duke, not too far away from his, going directly after the Rotting Leviathan there, and this is honestly probably a big mistake. With the upgraded Dance Macabre, that Leviathan's got devastating weapon strength plus anti-large. You can see it's just beating the brakes. It's a little bit hard to see actually, but yeah, the Red Duke is really not happy about this particular situation. Although the rest of the Vampire Coast units are crumbling, you can see the last of the zombies actually go there, so just kidding, there's one more unit here. But at this point, it's just about down to only the crab units. And once again, we throw a net down on this Terrorgeist. I was thinking maybe I would save it and try and use it on the Red Duke. Probably would have been more useful to actually use it on the Red Duke and then try and get the Leviathan to finish it off here. So yeah, a little bit of a strange situation there, but instead we used it on this Terrorgeist to try and finish it off. It's getting pretty low, but unfortunately my healer at her healing cap is also not happy in terms of her leadership. She's crumbling. You know, she's at her healing cap once again, so she can't be healed anymore. And once that healing goes, once that Dance Macabre and the other, you know, magical support goes, it's going to be pretty tough. You can see the Depth Guard are the only infantry still holding out, and they're finally crumbling just because they're just completely outnumbered here by Vampire Count's infantry. I think that was honestly the biggest issue in this particular battle, is that, you know, I was focusing so much of my crab power on taking down these aerial units that the infantry kind of ran away with the fight a little bit there. And yeah, as I kind of alluded to earlier, I don't think that Arnessa is necessarily the best pick in this matchup. Certainly the heavy armor, anti-large armor piercing can be useful against the Vampire Counts, but because Luther Harkon is just so devastating against enemy casters, I think he's the best pick in this matchup. Honestly, at this point things are not that far out. The balance of power just barely, at this point, starting to tip decisively in the favor of the Vampire Counts. That being said, the Red Duke might not survive this. He's got the Hornswaggle on him. We've been trying to keep those taunts up on him as much as possible, but without the actual taunt, we only have Hornswaggle now with Arnessa. But the Regiment of Renowned Crabs are crumbling. The Rotting Leviathan holding out very admirably, and it may be even worth it to try out a double Leviathan build, but honestly I think Luther Harkon with another Terrorgeist, you just win the air, bring a whole bunch of deck droppers, and you just shoot the Vampire Counts. and try and win that way. I think that's probably a more traditional way to go about this particular matchup, but decided to try out Aranessa. Unfortunately, Fish Lady gets domed by the Terrorgeist this time, and the Vampire Counts are going to pull out a victory here, and yeah. Fun battle nonetheless, lots of crabby crabs, and all the clacking and clanking and snapping of claws. And at the end of the day, the big crab is the last to go, and go he does. In the middle of his death animation, the battle ends. Oh man, awesome. Absolutely awesome. Huge thanks once again to Creative Assembly for giving me early access here. It's been a ton of fun. Bringing this content to you guys. So in terms of this particular battle, Aranessa not necessarily playing out exactly as I had hoped. She definitely did well, and we were almost able to pull it out there. Maybe a few differences, like cutting the mortar, for example, for something else, may have made the difference at the end of the day. It's hard to say. But still a very fun battle. Well played, Lore Master of Sotek. Hope you guys enjoyed watching that one. Aranessa, we pretty much went through all of her abilities there and her quirks. The fact that she is living, so she doesn't benefit from some of the other abilities of the Vampire Coast, may mean that in builds with Aranessa, you might want to consider bringing either Deeps or Death. I mean, Vampires is still going to be very good for healing everything besides her, certainly, and Dance Macabre is still a very efficient and cheap melee attack and speed buff, which is very useful for her, but there's an argument to be made that maybe you ought to bring another Lord Magic if you're bringing Aranessa as your Lord, but nonetheless, very fun battle. The crabs themselves, especially these guys, the Regiment of Renown, Rotting Prometheans, these guys are very, very tanky, and they can do some devastating damage. 146 kills, 175 on those Depth Guard. They were cutting up summon zombies left and right. 81 for the Rotting Leviathan. Again, pretty solid in this matchup. I think it's going to be pretty good in some other matchups as well. We'll look at that some more going forward. But, yeah, Vampire Fleet Captain also made an appearance this time. The generic caster. She does a pretty good job. The crab characters, very tanky. The crabs, I believe, give the characters charge defense. Let's go ahead and just quickly take a look at the Vampire Coast here. So if we have Aranessa, she has charge defense normally, and she also has charge defense on the crab. How about the Fleet Captain? No charge defense, and, oh, okay, so she does not have charge defense. Just out of curiosity, how about the Gunnery White? He does not have charge defense either. Okay, so the actual crabs themselves do have charge defense, as well as the Gunnery Mob variant. They both have charge defense. The Regiment of Renown has expert charge defense, as does the Leviathan. So there you go, crabs on crabs. Hope you all enjoyed watching. If you do like this sort of content, be sure to like, subscribe, hit that bell notification button. If you found it interesting, entertaining, or informative, be sure to share it with your friends. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you next time.